For what purpose, gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul, rise?
I have an amendment at the desk.
The Chair understands the gentleman seeks to offer the amendment regarding family planning at this time.
That is correct.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Paul of Texas.
Pursuant to the order of the House of Thursday, July 29, 1999, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. What purpose, gentleman from Alabama, rise?
In opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman will control 5 minutes in opposition to the amendment. The gentleman.
I also ask unanimous consent to transfer my 5 minutes to the gentlelady from California and give her the authority also to yield as she so deems necessary.
Without objection, the gentlelady from California will control 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank
you. The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
I yield myself 3 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment is straightforward. It prohibits the use of any money for population control, family planning, or abortion of any funds authorized in this bill, appropriated in this bill. The question really is this: should the American taxpayer be required to pay for birth control pills, IUDs, Depo-Provera, Norplant, and condom distribution, as well as abortion in foreign countries? Those who believe this is a proper and legitimate function will vote against the amendment. Those who believe that it is not a proper function for us to be doing these things around the world would vote for my amendment. I mention abortion because although this bill does not authorize funds directly for abortion, any birth control center that is involved that receives funds from us and are involved with abortion, all they do is shift the funds. All funds are fungible. So any country that we give money to that are involved with abortion for whatever reason, or especially in a family planning clinic, can very easily shift those funds and perform abortion. So this is very, very clear cut. I would like to spend a minute, though, on the authority that is cited for doing such a thing. Under the House rules, the committee is required to at least cite the constitutional authority for doing what we do on each of our bills. And, of course, I was curious about this because I was wondering whether this could be general welfare. This doesn't sound like the general welfare of the U.S. taxpayer to be passing out condoms and birth control pills and forcing our will on other people, imposing our standards on them, and forcing our taxpayers to pay. That doesn't seem to have anything to do whatsoever with the general welfare of this country. And of course, the other clause that's generally used in this in our legislation is the Interstate Commerce Clause. Well, it'd be pretty tough justifying passing out condoms in the various countries of the world on the Interstate Commerce Clause. So it was very interesting to read exactly what the justification is. The Committee on Appropriation, I'm quoting from the committee report, the Committee on Appropriation bases its authority to report this legislation from Clause 7, Section 9 of Article 1 of the Constitution of the United States of America, which states, quote, no money shall be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriation made by law, close quote. Appropriations contained in this act, the report says, are made pursuant to this specific power granted by the Constitution. That is not a power, that was a prohibition. It was to keep us from spending money without appropriation. If this is true, we can spend money on anything in the world and the Constitution has zero meaning. This cannot possibly be. So all I would suggest is this be a little more creative when we talk about the Constitution. There must be a more creative explanation on why we're spending these kind of monies overseas.
The gentleman's 3 minutes has expired. Gentlelady from California.
Mr. Chairman, who has the right to close?
Gentlelady from California defending the position of the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I rise in very strong opposition to the Paul Amendment, and it's not even reluctantly. It is with grave disappointment, frankly, that this amendment is even being proposed, though I respect the gentleman's right to do so, and I respect the gentleman. If this Paul Amendment would be enacted, it would cause deaths and suffering for millions of women and children. I say that without any fear of contradiction. Of course, we all want to reduce the number of abortions performed throughout the world. And the best way to do that is to promote family planning. It seems hard to believe that the gentleman would stand up and say he doesn't know why it is in our national interest that we improve the plight of children, poor children and families throughout the world by allowing them the opportunity to make decisions for themselves about the timing and the number of children that a family would have, or that the impact that this has on women, alleviating poverty, raising the literacy rate, and again, giving more empowerment to women by having them control their own destinies. And the issue of population. Certainly, we understand that our world's resources are finite. I think that most would agree that it is in our interest, as well as the interest of every person living on this earth, that we husband our resources very carefully, and that includes curbing uncontrolled population growth. And I say that as one who does not support any forced measures in that end, but voluntary efforts to that end. This amendment would close the most effective avenue to preventing abortions. The gentleman says that, well, if we spend this money, then the organizations that use this money but also perform abortions have this underwriting, or the money is fungible, and therefore we are supporting abortions. I think the gentleman knows full well that the law that no funds may be used for abortion procedures. That is the law of the land. We reiterate it every time we have a discussion on this subject. And if you're going to apply fungibility, you have to apply it to everything we do here. I don't know why all of a sudden, when it comes to international family planning, fungibility becomes a principle, but when we're dealing with the defense bill or any other appropriations, we never say that giving money for this, that, or the other person helps that country underwrite some practices that we might not approve of. The amendment would end more than a 30-year-old program that is recognized as one of the most successful components of U.S. foreign assistance. Tens of millions of couples, Mr. Chairman, in the developing world are using family planning as a direct result of this program, and the average number of children per family has declined more than one-third since the 1960s. 3 out of 4 Americans surveyed in 1995 wanted to increase or maintain spending on family planning for poor countries. I was this year in India and saw what happened in those states where there was effective family planning, as opposed to what was the plight of the people in areas where the women did not have access to this family planning information. So I believe that this amendment would be contrary to the interest and values of the vast majority of the people in the world, and certainly, speaking in our own terms, of the American people. In February 1997, both the House and the Senate showed their commitment to the USAID International Family Planning Program by voting for the early release of funds specifically for this program. We had to have a vote at that point. I see some of my colleagues are on their feet, and I am pleased to yield to the distinguished chairman of the Authorizing Committee, the International Relations Committee, Mr. Gilman.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding, and I just want to associate myself with the remarks of the gentlelady. Population control, population planning is so important today. That's the next crisis that we're confronted with. The growth of populations around the world are going to lead to hunger in impoverished areas, and where we have hunger and poverty, we soon have hostility. And the best way to prevent that is to help with family planning and with population control. And I thank the gentlelady for her arguments in opposition to this.
I thank the distinguished chairman, and pleased to yield for the closing argument to the distinguished chairman of the
I thank the gentlelady
Foreign
from
Operations
California.
Subcommittee.
You know, it's my duty, I guess, in this House as chairman of this subcommittee to draft a bill. And in order to draft a bill, I must have to depend upon a very able staff, which really did the drafting of this 119 pages of law that hopefully will be passed tomorrow morning. Upon my instruction, I would like to reiterate, and I know the gentleman from Texas has already brought it out, but since I'm responsible for writing this bill, the bill says that none of the funds made available under this heading may be used to pay for the performance of abortions as a method of family planning. So I just want to make perfectly clear my position as the author of this bill with respect to abortions.
Time of the gentlelady has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The gentlelady makes the point that we should not use the abortion issue to talk about fungibility, and I believe she is correct. I think it should apply to everything. For this is the reason I do strongly oppose Export-Import Bank money going to Red China. Their violations of civil liberties and their abortions, there's good reasons why we shouldn't do it, and yet they're the greatest recipient of our foreign aid through the Export-Import Bank. $5.9 billion they have received over the years. So I would say, yes, you're correct. All these programs are fungible, and I also agree that the wording in the bill says that our funds can't be used. But when you put our funds in with other funds, all of a sudden they're in a pool, and they can shift them around, and there is a real thing called fungibility. So once we send money to a country for any reason, we endorse what they do. So therefore, we should be rather cautious. Matter of fact, if we were cautious enough, we would not be in the business of taking money at the point of a gun from our American taxpayer, doing things that they find abhorrent around the world, and imposing our will and our standards on them. Birth control methods are not perfectly safe. As a gynecologist, I have seen severe complications from the use of IUDs and Depo-Provera and Norplant. Birth control pills, you can have strokes with birth control pills. These are not benign. And you say, we want to stop the killing in abortion. But just remember, every time the abortion is done with fungible fund, it is killing. It is killing an innocent human being. So, for very real reasons, if we were serious about stopping this and protecting the American taxpayer, there's nothing wrong with some of your goals. I agree, as a gynecologist, I would agree with your goals, but they shouldn't be done through coercion. They should be done through voluntary means, through our churches and our charities. That's the way this should be done. We don't have the authority to coerce our people to work hard, pay their taxes, and then take the money into foreign countries and impose our will on them.
Time of the gentleman's expired. All time for debate on this amendment has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Texas.
I ask for a recorded vote and make a point of order. Corman's not present.
Pursuant to House Resolution 263, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Texas will be postponed. And the point of order is withdrawn.